Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menasce. This is the weekend edition where we interview notable people from the world of real estate investing. Today is no exception. We have a great guest all the way from Scottsdale, Arizona. Welcome to the show, Cody Bjugan.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, great to have you here, Cody. Now, you've been in the land development game, something that's near and dear to my heart, something that we're very active in as well. But before we dive into those details, why don't you give a little bit of your backstory and how you got to this point in your journey?
Well, that's a long story, so I'll try to keep it short. I'm 43 today, living in Scottsdale. Prior to moving here in September of last year, I lived up in the Pacific Northwest, Oregon, Washington, Idaho. That's where my business was, and really born and raised there. But if we were to rewind all the way back, I grew up in a small little town called Menasce. I think they got their first street light when I was halfway through my childhood. I think they still only have one street light. But grew up in a challenging household, not a great father figure. Bless his soul. I love him, care about him. But, I learned more what not to do than what to do. But grew up as an athlete, realized I was an entrepreneur. And, I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was back then. But I realized I was an entrepreneur actually when I was about 12 years old. Looking back, is I used to buy and sell sports cards, and I used to go down to the local flea market every weekend and buy and sell and trade sports cards. So I didn't know that meant anything other than I just liked sports cards. But today, looking back, I see where my entrepreneurship started at a very young age. From there, in high school, I bought and sold cars, and I just kind of put lipstick on them, just a quick value add. If we're going to talk real estate, I'd do that with cars, nothing major, just some basic CapEx, and then I would sell the cars. And so here's where it gets really fun. So I was going to head off to college, go to ASU, which is actually right down the street from where I live now. And the Lord had a different plan. I got my high school girlfriend pregnant. So instead of going off to college, I went right into the workforce, went into the flooring union. After being there 3 months, you qualify for health insurance. So I was able to pay for my baby boy that was on the way. Also got married 3 months out of high school. One thing led to another. I had a lot of success in the flooring industry, went to a private company, very driven, very focused, very motivated. The success I had in my career reflected that. Got into real estate in 2002, just through a few different reasons, but the main reason is most of my clients were home builders, developers. I saw what they were doing. Plus, there's some real estate in the history of my company and kind of my blood. So got into real estate. Had a ton of success, not to talk about money, but, I was worth 8 figures in my mid-20s. And then lo and behold, by the time I was 29, the market crashed, lost 90% of my net worth. And I was a snot-nosed punk kid back then, being that young, making that kind of money. It came quick. I didn't have mentors. I wasn't in courses. I wasn't in books. I wasn't in masterminds. I wasn't listening to things like podcasts. Nothing of the sort. I thought I was the stuff. So I can tell you that when I lost it, 90% of it, I learned a whole lot more losing it than I did making it. That was definitely a trial that I went through that I chose to come out the other side of that stronger. I think often people, they have a choice. They can come out the other side as a victim. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of victims out there in life. But when trials, tribulations, challenges, failures come your way, you have a choice. Are you going to be a victim, or are you going to reflect and grow and have an opportunity? It's actually a springboard, in my opinion. So I could rattle off numerous other things, to me almost going to prison. It was nothing what you're thinking. It had to do with money and structuring and a law I didn't even know was illegal. But just lots of different things I've been through that have sculpted me in who I am today. One of the biggest things that I talk a lot about is just because you go and make lots of money and you have a successful business doesn't mean you're successful as an individual. There's many areas of life you got to be successful, in my eyes, be seen as a successful human. So that's what my legacy's focused on at this point, is just through all the different failures I've been through and through my business model that I do and teach, it allows a certain amount of time freedom to where people can truly be successful in all areas of their life. And we can get into what it is I do and teach. But lately, I'm definitely more focused on, and it's the reason I started my education company, VestRight, taking my career and putting it into an educational platform, is PIF, which people often think of as paid in full in sales. But to me, the way to get paid in full is purpose, impact, fulfillment. And so have a purpose, figure out what your purpose is, what your passion is, have a positive impact through that purpose, and through that you'll find fulfillment. Often people think they're striving for happiness, but in my opinion, everybody's striving for what I call fulfillment, and fulfillment just isn't possible without impact. And that's why VestRight, that company, I mean, yes, my development company is scaling across the country, and I have CEOs and executives, and we're doing all these deals, and it's phenomenal, and I'm very thankful, but VestRight is just very close to my heart, because to me, it's a huge legacy move for me to take all that I've learned the hard way and format it into an educational platform with numerous courses to have the opportunity to really impact my legacy in a big way.
I love that. That's quite a story. So today you are focused primarily on land development. There's many different forms of land development. I often tell people that there's two ways to make money in land. You start with raw land and you carve it up, or you take already developed land and you put it back together. Those are the two principal methods.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
One or the other. And of course, we're also extremely active in raw land development. So we're going to have a great conversation around that. What's your focus? You talked about value add being a big part of your DNA right from an early age. How does that play into land?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we just recently decided that the best way to describe what we do is value add. And we had to come up with something, because so in 2002, when we started our development business, to be very clear, everything we do is off market. It has been ever since 2002. On market, I mean, we might do an on market deal once in a blue moon, but for the most part, on market deals, they're either hair on, there's issues, they're overpriced, or I've already looked at them. So everything's off market. And then we go and we do the entitlement, the approval process, governmental approvals, preliminary plat, whatever you want to call it, to get the project approved. We would do the CDs, we would develop it, we would build the houses, and then we'd sell. Okay, that's what we used to do. Then we quit building the houses about 7 years ago. And then as of the last couple of years, we haven't even been developing our projects. We've just been exiting at preliminary plat to the large nationals, publicly traded companies. And it's just there's such a demand right now in that space. What we're able to exit for at entitlements, or at I should say preliminary plat, is it just doesn't make any sense for us to take on the development risk. So here's why I came up with value add. A few people have called us wholesalers, and it's partly our fault, because my marketing team, when I first started VestRight, my marketing team was referring to what we do as wholesaling, and it's the furthest from the truth. What we do is value add. What we do is we take a piece of raw land off market that has development potential, and we get it through the political approval process, and we get it stamped as an approved project or subdivision. And here, and I gotta say this, if you're gonna pay for a diamond, make sure it's a diamond. So if you're going to go and pay development values for land, you better make sure those approvals are in place until you close. That is a very golden rule of mine, because at the end of the day, just because it's zoned, utilities are there, access is there, it doesn't mean you can just go and develop it. Like, there's a process, and there's lots of curveballs that can be thrown your way. And so most real estate agents are, bless their souls, but they're uneducated in this space. And so if someone gets a hold of an agent, all of a sudden they think this deal is going to close like a home transaction. And our whole thing is, hey, you want me to close it in 30, 60 days? I'll do it, but I'm paying as is value for it. Whatever it is right now is what I'm paying for it. And I'm going to put it into my land bank division, okay, which is a totally different division than my entitlement division. But if you want 8 to 10x payday, then you've got to give me the terms of not having to close until it's an approved subdivision. And so here's why it's value add instead of wholesaling. If house wholesalers or most wholesalers, they've got to go find desperate, motivated sellers and try to buy below market value and then quickly flip the deal to a cash buyer and make 10, 20, 30 grand a deal or whatever it is they make, right? What we do is we go and pay market value. Our average deal to get it through approvals, we spend $500,000 on it. Now, those are bigger deals. You can do them for less than that, but so we go put that $500,000 in it and we get this approved subdivision. So now we've taken something that's just a piece of raw land and we've turned it into an approved subdivision. And then we exit. Because remember, if you're going to pay development values to that seller, you're not going to close until approval. So then what you do is a double closing or simultaneous closing with your buyer, and your buyer's money pays your seller and you make your scrape out of the middle. And that's what we teach our students, is that simplistic model. We don't get into how development works and how vertical works, because there's plenty of information out there and education out there on construction. And quite frankly, I don't have any magic sauce to bring to that element of the industry. It's more of a technical side, where what we teach is more the creative side, because the approval process, you've got to be creative, resourceful, think outside the box. It's why these big publics, they don't thrive in that area, because you got to think outside the box. And quite frankly, they love cutting that 6 to 12 months off their time frame. So it's definitely a value add model, and it's something that's been very fun to go and teach that, people otherwise would have no opportunity to get into the space, because what you and I do, most people see as untouchable, right? The barrier of entry is just too high. And you're right, there is a ton of capital and risk needed in our industry. But where the major capital starts and where the major risk starts is when you break ground, right? Is when you close on that land and you break ground. That's where all of a sudden now your capital goes up by 8 to 10x, and then you got 3x that of debt. Now you have market exposure. And so this simplistic model that we're teaching it's just been a real blessing.
It's been an interesting journey for us as well in this particular space, because some projects we take right through to vertical construction, and then other times, like you and I spoke about before the interview, we will often be approached by a national home builder who basically just wants to buy the project in its entirety, take it off our hands, and we'll exit, like you, at preliminary plat approval. For those who are not initiated in the world of land development, preliminary plat simply means agreement in principle. Doesn't mean you can put a shovel in the ground. From there, you've got to take it through, produce all the construction drawings for the roads, the utilities, sidewalks, everything. And then when that's approved, you have your building permit for the subdivision. Then you can put a shovel in the ground. And that's where the big money spend starts at that point. But up until that point, having approval in principle is often enough to lower the risk barrier for a major home builder.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So our main two things we're teaching, right, is one, how to do off-market prospecting, raw land that has development potential. And then two, preliminary plat is a form of a land use approval, right? So in like multifamily or storage, instead of them calling it preliminary plat, they might call it design review approval, right? There's different types of land use approvals, but here's the beauty. 90% of the process is the same, no matter what the asset class is. Because I mainly do single family residential, right? We do plats. And so I was able to go over and start doing multifamily deals. I actually found them easier because there's less utilities, there's no public right-of-ways, and then on top of that, yes, you have to go and provide some exterior elevations. You got to provide some architectural exterior elevations of the building. But as far as the process and the detail and the utilities and the infrastructure, it's 10 times simpler in multifamily. So we were able to take what we knew in single family and going and doing a multifamily deal. I don't mean to understate the process, but we felt like it was a walk in the park. So what's nice is you can take this knowledge and you can kind of bounce from asset class to asset class.
What's nice about the multifamily, as you said, is all the roads are private roads on the property. You don't have public right-of-ways, so there's a lot less regulation. You got to meet your parking ratio and keep within the setbacks and the building envelope that's required by the zoning, but that's about it. And that makes it a whole lot simpler. And of course, the land parcels are smaller. You can do a multifamily project in 8, 10, 12 acres. 10 to 12 acres for a residential subdivision is too small. It's a tiny subdivision.
Yep, that's right. That's exactly right.
I love it. Well, Cody, if folks want to connect, if they want to learn more, what's the best way?
What you and I are talking about right here, it's a kind of a blue ocean. Very few guys know or understand what we're talking about here. And so I would push people to go over to Vestrite and we have tons of free content. Just get educated. And so the best place to go, in my opinion, is I have numerous places I can send you, but we have it's basically an ebook is what it is. You'll probably learn more in that free ebook than you've ever learned in this space before. So go to Vestrite, which is VESTRIGHT, vestrite.com/land101. Vestrite.com/land101. And I can't guarantee it, but more than likely you'll learn more just in that little playbook we put together than you have ever in our space for the majority of people.
I love it. Well, Cody, I really appreciate the perspective. And for the listeners at home, definitely connect with Cody at vestright.com. That's vestright.com. And check out his playbook at vestright.com/land101. And in the meantime, have an awesome rest of your weekend. Go make some great things happen, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.